Hello, Elizabeth here, and today I'm going to show you how I made this rhinestone water bottle customized with a cursive name. Adding the name is not as hard as it looks. I cut it out of vinyl using my Cricut machine and rhinestoned right over the vinyl, so I had a nice solid guide to follow. I'm gonna walk you through everything step by step. I started with this stainless steel water bottle I got on Amazon. It has an ombre light purple to dark purple color and has a logo engraved in it. I started by sanding the surface of the water bottle, then wiping it down with alcohol to remove the dust and any dirt or oil that could be on the surface. Then I took this lavender acrylic paint from the dollar store and used a foam brush to coat the entire bottle. I did this to even out the purple to one solid color and to cover the logo. Once that was fully dried, I applied the name to the water bottle using a vinyl sticker I cut out with my Cricut machine. I have another video explaining how to do this in depth if you've never done it before. My favorite glue for rhinestone projects is called Gem Tack by the brand Beacon, and I transfer it into a precision tip bottle. I use a wax pencil that can be sharpened to pick up and place my rhinestones. I'm using 3, 4, and 5 mm light amethyst AB rhinestones with a transparent back, as well as crystal AB rhinestones in the sizes SS3, 4, 12, and 16. Links to everything are in the description. I started by filling in the name with the crystal AB rhinestones. I applied a thin layer of gem tack in a small section at the top of the E and began placing mixed sizes of the crystal AB stones to fit as perfectly as possible into the vinyl letters. It took some nudging around to figure out what was the best fit for everything, but gem tack dries slowly, so I had no problem making adjustments as I went. Ideally, you want to use a color of vinyl that matches the color of your rhinestones pretty closely. This will prevent your gaps from being too noticeable. I find white is usually a pretty good base color for crystal AB rhinestones. Next, I applied a thin line of gem tack at the top of the water bottle and started applying my 5 mm light amethyst AB rhinestones side by side around the circumference of the water bottle. These rhinestones have a transparent back, so it's especially important for the item to have a base color that matches the rhinestones, and the purple acrylic paint I used was perfect. Just be aware that if you apply rhinestones with a transparent back to something that's a different color, not only will it show the gaps more, but it can completely change the look of the rhinestones. My rhinestone makeup brush video shows an example of this when putting these amethyst stones on a black surface. This first row was my foundation for the rest of the water bottle, so I just made sure everything was as straight and even as possible before moving on to the next row. Then I did another line of 5 mm stones, nestling them into the cracks between the stones in the first row. This is called the honeycomb method. I continued this honeycomb pattern around the entire water bottle except for where the name is, which made this project go a lot faster than doing the scatter method with a bunch of tiny stones. Larger stones are the key to working quickly because they take up more surface area. When I got to the third row, I continued my honeycomb pattern, but this row overlaps with the name, so I used some of the smaller amethyst stones to fill in the gaps where the larger ones didn't fit. Then I continued working all the way around as I did with the other rows, doing the honeycomb pattern with the 5mm stones. There are some gaps that even my smallest amethyst stones didn't fit in, and I'm going to come back to those later in the video to show you what I did in those areas. As I continued working down the water bottle, I used my smaller amethyst stones to fill in the space inside the letter E and continued the honeycomb pattern around the outside. Once I have a solid foundation for my honeycomb stones, I like to do dots of glue where each stone will be placed instead of a line of glue. It just keeps things cleaner and is also very satisfying to do. As you can see, once the rhinestones covered that logo, it wasn't visible at all, even though it was showing a bit still after painting it. If you want to hide a logo without doing any painting, you could strategically place a vinyl design over top of it. With every row, I got as close to the name as possible with the honeycomb stones, and then stuck smaller stones in to fill the gaps as best I could. When filling in the spaces in between the letters, I found it looked best to use small stones even if there was enough room to put a larger stone in those gaps. I tried using a few of the larger ones and ended up taking them out because they just looked out of place. So I used the largest stones only for the honeycomb pattern and used the 3 and 4mm stones to fill all the spaces in and around the letters, except for those teeny tiny gaps, which again I will come back to in a bit. Once I got to the bottom of the water bottle, the final row was a little bit tricky. Normally I do the top and bottom edges first with my tumblers, but because this one was a honeycomb method, I just started at the top and worked my way down. So the 5mm stones were just a little too big for the final row. They were overlapping over the bottom edge, so I just used the smaller ones and still honeycombed them into the cracks of the previous row. There was just a bit more space left in between the stones. It looked great when it was done, and I don't think it's noticeable, but the most important thing is that your water bottle can sit flat on a table. You don't want anything overlapping that edge. So this is what it looked like once all of that was complete. But I do still have a few of those tiny gaps, which probably would have been fine to just leave the way they were, but I really wanted to fill them in. And this is where I might lose you and you might think I'm crazy, which is fair. But here's how I solved the tiny gap issue. If you didn't already know this, you can actually sand down rhinestones and customize them to be whatever shape and size you need them to be. I laid a sheet of sandpaper on my table and used a pair of pliers to hold on to the rhinestones and sanded the edges of each stone until it was the size and shape I needed to fill each teeny tiny gap. You may find it easier to place these stones with tweezers instead of a wax pencil for a bit more precision. My advice is to drag the flat side of the stone against the sandpaper and just repeatedly do a single stroke in that direction instead of sanding back and forth, because then you'll leave more of the shiny side of the stone intact. If you sand on the shiny side, you'll end up with a lot more visible dull edges, especially if you're using something with an AB finish like I am. What would solve this problem entirely is simply having smaller stones. And if I could start over, I would have probably ordered some tiny stones in this color in the first place, but at this point it was too late and my sanding technique did the trick. It was just very tedious. But as you can see, all of my funky shaped gaps were filled in the end and it gave a beautiful final result. Once you're done, you want to let it sit for at least 7 days, and then you can wash the water bottle to get any wax or glue residue off the rhinestones and make it super sparkly. I have a video tutorial demonstrating how to wash a rhinestone tumbler. The text is definitely visible, but it is a more subtle look. You don't really notice the name in some lighting, which is still gorgeous. But if you want the name to be really prominent and visible no matter what, I would suggest choosing 2 colors that are very contrasting. Stones that don't have an AB finish are definitely easier to distinguish as well. AB stands for Aurora Borealis, or the Northern Lights, and it's just referring to that rainbowy reflection of all the different colors that you see on these stones. But you can buy silver and purple rhinestones in these same base tones that are still super shiny, they just don't have that multicolored reflection to them. So those don't blend together side by side nearly as much. But they also don't twinkle the same, which is why I just love AB stones. They are so sparkly. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment letting me know what you would like to see next. See you later!